Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's been a minute here. First time in 2 weeks here on the Wolverine live show. Here on a Monday night, Anthony Broom here with Clayton Safey, Chris Ballas, coming off of, I think I speak for all of us, fellas, when I say probably a needed couple weeks off from the show. Kind of have been in the dog days of the off season, but Clayton and I were off last week, back in the saddle for this week, and football is right around the corner. We've got Big Ten Media Days next week. We've got fall camp that starts a few days after that, around August 1st. So the offseason is, I know we're still 47 days away from kickoff for Michigan football, but the offseason very much kind of coming to a close here. So, again, welcome back, fellas. Well, how has everything been? I feel like we haven't chatted in a while.
Great, man. Got a little bit of R&R up to Torch Lake one day and Lake Michigan, Traverse City. It's been fantastic. We still got a little time. I wouldn't say right around the corner. I would say we're in position to be in position, as those guys always say, right? To tackle football season. But it's been fun. Glad to see you guys had a little break. Clayton went and shot, I think, 69 at Bay Harbor, if I'm not mistaken.
Nice.
Yeah. Yep.
Ish.
Nice.
So it's fun. Hope you guys had a great time. I hope the All-Star game was great, Anthony.
Yeah, just got back from the Pacific Northwest, spent 8 days in Seattle and out there, went to the home run derby. That was amazing. A nice little bucket list item checked off for me. Spent some time up on Mount Rainier, and I posted this on Twitter, but it was kind of, you get on a plane. I was on a plane yesterday. You get out, you open the window, and you see Mount Rainier, and way off in the distance, Mount St. Helen. And the water's blue as could be, and the sky is blue. There's all this greenery, and then you open the window back up when you get into Detroit, and it looks like you're in a bowling alley in the 70s with all the smog and smoke and crap out there. So back to reality. But okay, so
Canada,
this is
Canada. I like one guy up there, Canada Mike, but other than that,
yeah. Shout out to Canada Mike
and our Canadian subscribers, of course.
All of them.
That's right.
We love this is an international brand here, but yeah, a lot to get to tonight. First off, what I would like to do is, and we're going to talk about some things that with our time off, we think we have a little more clarity on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. On Saturday, Olivier Nkamhoua, the Tennessee transfer, now Michigan Wolverine for basketball, spoke to the media for the first time. So we were able to kind of glean some stuff from him. We'll talk about, is your city a Midwest city or not? Shout out to our old friend Hunter Dickinson for that one. And also take your questions. A lot of good stuff on the fort this week. But before we get into it, I want to welcome a new sponsor to our show in Bird Dogs. And real quick, so right before we went out on our respective vacations, Clayton and I both get a care package. Chris, I think you got one too.
I did.
But Bird Dogs, they are these shorts that have a lining with them. It's like a shorts and underwear in one. And I'm not going to model them on screen. You got to pay a little extra for that type of coverage here. But Bird Dogs, use promo code Wolverine over at birddogs.com. You see all the offerings they have for you. I think the one I have is that second photo. We're sent two pairs of shorts, and also I have this nice little cup here as well. So our friends over there, we're excited to work with them. And this is me stalling while I try and pull up the read. They are stretch khaki shorts that are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. I could definitely use that. They do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit better than regular shorts and are made of stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement and movement, and also the anti-stink and sweat wicking fabric. I mean, I went up into the Mount Rainier one day, wore my Bird Dog shorts up there, and I felt like that whole section was as cool as the top of the mountain down there. So shout out to Bird Dogs. I know you other guys have things to say about them as well, but
extremely
excited to work with them.
Extremely impressed by the fit. You never know what you're going to get with shorts, and the elastic waist and just the fit was fantastic. I saw they used a picture of my ass on the tight ass on that one for the jeans there. Can I say that on the air? I don't know.
You just did.
I just did. They're great, man. I would highly recommend them. And not just saying that, really, really impressed.
Yeah, I was wearing them basically all vacation as well up north. I would have shot a 68 if I wore them for my round at Bay Harbor. Was disappointed. I two putted the last hole, so I never love a two putt when you're going for trying to get a 66, but 69 I'll take it. And Bird Dog's comfortable. You can wear them for every occasion too. You can wear them in the water. You could wear them out to dinner. So very versatile.
Yeah, they're awesome. Super happy that they were able to hook that up for us. So head over to birddogs.com/Wolverine or enter the promo code Wolverine, and you will get a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. This one that you see here on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, that's birddogs.com/Wolverine or promo code Wolverine for the free Yeti style tumbler. They say here, this is the last line of the read that they sent us. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. And like I said, I mean, short of flipping them inside out, I mean, I was wearing those my entire vacation. So, excited to work with them. And now we move on to the nuts and bolts of the show. Fellas, we've had a couple weeks off from the show. A couple of us have been on vacation. And really, we've had a lot of time since spring football ended now to kind of reflect on the things we know, things maybe we don't know about this Michigan football team. But I wanted to focus today one aspect on offense, one aspect on defense, where we feel like we've gained the most clarity, at least in our minds, a take or a storyline that we feel the most secure and comfortable with about this football team on both sides of the ball. So gave you guys a couple hours to scheme up and think of that. So let's switch it up today. We'll start with Clayton for what he's got on offense.
Yeah, great question. I think that for me, I'm going to say it's that I think the pass game is going to be much improved from last season, even though you lose a Ronnie Bell, you lose a second-round tight end. But I just think J.J. McCarthy is going to take a pretty big step. And some of this stems from Jim Harbaugh's comment predicting that it'll be 50-50 run to pass. I don't think it's going to be that. But I think in Jim Harbaugh, as we've talked about in the past, he says some things in the offseason that maybe don't come true. Once the season comes, they're going to do everything they can to win, and they're going to have a really strong ground game as well. But I just think it doesn't matter if it's 58 or 57 or 61.9 like it was last season. All that matters is that you have everything at your disposal on a given down in a given situation against a given opponent. And I think Michigan's going to have that more times than it did last season because you have a second-year starting quarterback who's really experienced and has a ton of tools, and you're seeing being mocked as a potential first-rounder for next season. Could be that the year after if he decides to stay for his senior year. So I'm just going to say that it's not the 50-50 maybe that Jim Harbaugh predicts, but I think that they're going to have more at their disposal this year in the pass game, and it's going to take a step forward. And the more and more you hear throughout the offseason, I feel more and more confident about it.
It's hard to, when you talk about clarity, it's hard to gain clarity in the summer because you don't really know what they're doing, right? They're doing 7-on-7 stuff. You can take what you hear. And, from spring when Sharon Moore was telling me, Michigan's offensive coordinator, that there were times that he'd play J.J. McCarthy 15 snaps. And he's like, all right, sit down, man. I've seen enough. You're a stud. And so I agree with Clay that that's going to be the case. But the one thing I would say with confidence is that this is going to be a healthy unit. And there was some concern there, right? Blake Corum talking about coming back in June, and you weren't sure about Trevor Keegan and his neck. You weren't sure about Drake Nugent. And in speaking with our sources for the Football Preview magazine, these guys are in great health and in great shape. So to me, that is exciting because there's so much talent there. And if these guys are healthy and with the depth, what one other thing I will add to that is with the depth, you know that they aren't going to be overworked this year, in my opinion. If a guy gets banged up, you can see a Giovanni El-Hadi go in there and save some mileage, so to speak, on Trevor Keegan, right? If you look at Drake Nugent, I think it's going to be the center. I don't think there's any question about it, but he's got guys behind him in Raheem Anderson and Greg Crippen who can play in there. And with the non-conference portion of the schedule not being so tough, I think you're going to see them mix it up a little bit. So there are a lot of bodies there. So excited about it and just happy that they're healthy because you want to start the season without any nicks and bumps and bruises. Hopefully they get through the fall that way as well, knock on wood.
Yeah, for me on offense, something I've honed in on is, when we talked to Jim Harbaugh about a month and a half ago at this point, he made the comment about wanting to be very deliberate about getting every guy on offense the touches that they needed to get. And I kind of stewed on that for a few weeks. Like, what does that actually mean? Is that just him? Is that him having, is it the coach speak thing? Is it, the philosophy? Again, I don't think he's giving away nuclear launch codes in June. But for me, I think something that I've honed in on is that the only real place on this offense where I think you need to be conscious week to week on who gets what amount of touches and who is involved in the offense is Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. I think that those guys, I think getting them, Blake Corum getting his 20 touches, Donovan Edwards getting his 15, 16, 17, whatever it winds up being, getting their touches, targets, whatever combination that is each week, to me is a non-negotiable, because those outside of JJ McCarthy are your two next best players on offense. So for me, I think it's, I think when he says that, it'd be great if you could, he doesn't like to compare and contrast because he says someone gets diminished in that. But, I'm not concerned about making sure that Cornelius Johnson has 8 targets a game if it means Donovan Edwards gets 3 or 4 less touches, or Blake Corum gets 3 or 4 less touches a game. I think for me, when you talk about this deliberate attempt to make sure guys get theirs on the Michigan offense, to me, it comes down to that workload between Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum, because, both those guys are coming off injuries, lower body injuries too, and Donovan Edwards had the hand. I think the way that you both maximize what their numbers look like in this offense, what their health looks like throughout the year, is if both of them are kind of getting theirs, and then you don't have to, all it takes is an injury for Blake Corum all of a sudden to have 29 carries in a game, or Donovan Edwards to be pressed into 25 or 26 carries a game. Now, we know they both can handle that workload, but I think week to week, if they're both healthy, I think looking at managing those numbers, those are the guys that you kind of hone in on for what that looks like, in my opinion.
Yep. I don't think there's any question. Did we talk defense yet?
We have not. Would you like to start us off?
I will start us off on the defense. And the one thing that I really was excited about was listening to not just Mike Elston on the In the Trenches podcast with John Jansen, which is outstanding, by the way. John Jansen in that role is fantastic, and as Michigan's color commentator on football games, but listening to guys like Sharon Moore talk about them, saying that the interior defensive line is one of the best and deepest that they've ever seen, and that they can't fathom how good it can be, which is saying something. And you're losing Mozzie Smith, fellas, but you got a guy in Mason Graham who you knew was going to be special the second that he came in. You've got a guy in Rayshawn Benny who has absolutely picked it up. He had one of the best springs out of anybody, out of any of the defenders. Kenneth Grant is that gift from the football gods, and he's barely even played yet. They love him. And, of course, Chris Jenkins, who is a projected first-round pick by some, which really shocked me, but didn't at the same time, because the guy just works his butt off, and he's got what it takes. So if he gets a little bit bigger, can he be a Maurice Hurst-type pass rusher on the interior? I don't think he'll be that good, but I think he'll improve. And then they talk about Cam Good a lot, too. And I think you've seen him improve as well. He looks bigger. Looks like a guy that might be able to play more on running downs as well. So they've got 5 guys in there that they really think can play and play at a high level. So to me, I think that's a given. And if you've got great line play on both sides of the ball, you're going to win a lot of ball games, fellas. I don't care where you are.
That's a great one. I mean, the defensive line, I'm a little bit less bullish on the defensive line than maybe some. I still think they have a lot to prove, especially as a pass rush unit, but obviously, great things to hear. I would say the thing that, just to me, and maybe it's not me gaining clarity on it, but it's Michigan strengthening the position, is corner. And just what they did with Josh Wallace, bringing him in this summer from the transfer portal in mid-June or whenever he committed. I just thought that was a really big development. It has me feeling a lot better about the defensive backfield. I would pick him to start the opener, as we've talked about in the past, but like, this could be a guy that really, he's experienced, maybe not at this level, but really gives them some time to develop some of those younger guys that are still coming up and don't have that experience yet. And then you got to remember this too, when you're playing, Josh Wallace against Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't sound like the best matchup for Michigan, but these guys, it may not be him by game 12 every single snap. You have Will Johnson still there. And secondly is, game 12 gives you 11 games to kind of, gain some of that experience, get Josh Wallace up to speed, playing at this level. So, maybe it's not gaining clarity, but just, what Michigan did in solidifying that position makes me feel pretty good about it. And, it's not as much of a concern as it is maybe a talking point from my standpoint.
Yeah, questions, not concerns, right? Like those are things. These are things that will be answered. I think for me, this is one that I was actually kind of surprised by. I did a radio hit in Nebraska earlier today, and one of the questions they asked me was, "What do you think is more of a concern for the Michigan football team? Is it the wide receivers?" Which I was like, okay, naturally, like I understand that. And they said, or the pass rush. And I stopped, like I had to think about that for a second because to me, it's never registered to me that I think that pass rush is going to be a problem this year. I actually think it's going to be a strength and one of the strengths of the Michigan defense. I think that they are. I like the depth they have there. Again, it's the second year in a row where you can, I think, rotate 4 guys in there and I think not have much of a drop off. Now I know it's through the lens of there was a natural drop off last year because you lost, 2 historically good pass rushers that were in your program at the same time. But, I think that Braden McGregor, if he just finishes a couple more plays, I think he's going to be a guy that pops this year. We know that Jalen Harrell is a 3-down defender that can do a little bit of everything. Maybe not master of one specific thing, but, has a lot in his bag of tricks. I think Derek Moore, I think long-term, you talk about replacing Mike Morris. I think Derek Moore is probably going to be a better college player. I think he winds up probably being a higher NFL draft pick than Morris was. And Josiah Stewart is, I think, already what Michigan was hoping Iabioki would be. This quick, twitchy, athletic disruptor that has, quite frankly, just been more productive at the college level, albeit, in a lower tier at Coastal Carolina. But to me, I think that the further we've gone through this offseason, especially we only got to see them play in the spring game, right? But I feel like this pass rush is going to be an asset. And knowing that there is more cohesion between them and the defensive tackles. And really, it seems like there's been more of an emphasis on that front 7 in general, just being better communicators. I think that those guys will probably be a little more disruptive than last year. And I'm pretty comfortable in saying that.
Yeah, and I like Josiah Stewart a lot. He's got that chip on his shoulder, and I think he's got more football want to than Oki does. And I don't mean that in a terrible way. I just think there are some guys that are, that just are all about the game. And I think that's this kid. From everything that we've heard, the people that we've spoken with, they say he's different in the room. And when you've got a guy like Derek Moore out there, but then Jesse Minter says we can all tell he's got a little bit different skill set than some of the guys on our team, that should really get you excited. And I love those guys that, he's not as tall as some of the other ones, but he's like, man, that just gives me more to prove. Mike Hart is a guy that comes to mind too. And I love guys that are built that way. So I'm excited about that. Excited to see what the pass rush does on the edges. The interior rush, when I'm talking about interior line play, number one is stopping the run. That's where it always starts, right? And I think these guys are going to be elite at that. I think Mason Graham, Chris Jenkins, Kenneth Grant. I think Mason Graham, like I've said many times, is the best freshman defensive tackle Michigan's ever had, true freshman. So, and he's only getting better as a sophomore. His care level is just off the charts as well, and his technical abilities and everything else. So, I love that. So, listening to guys like Steve Klingscale say this could be, one of the best defenses Michigan's ever had, and we're going to be an elite defense and so on and so forth. This isn't a guy that throws that kind of stuff out there either. So it excites me when I hear things like that. But what excites me the most is the culture in that locker room to go with that talent. You don't have a lot of me guys out there like you did in the late 20 teens. And these guys are all about the team and all about winning for Michigan.
Clayton, any lingering thoughts before we switch gears here?
Yeah, I mean, just back to, I guess, the pass rush is, there are plenty of guys there that I think could step up. But to me, it is a concern coming into this season, and it probably won't. We won't learn anything about it. We'll learn some, like we thought we did week 1 last year against Colorado State. They had 8 or 9 sacks, and then Colorado State allowed 10 the next week to someone terrible. It was like, oh, okay, maybe pump the brakes here. And then I thought the Maryland game, they didn't get enough. They started to get it more, especially late in some of those games. And Doug Karsh, Michigan's radio play-by-play man, had the great point that pass rush was heating up late in those games, Indiana, Iowa. It was kind of like a great closer in baseball. But I want to see it a little bit more consistently throughout entire games. I want to see it consistently against the better teams. TCU comes to mind. Last season they actually had more sacks than they did in 2021, which is maybe something that looking back, people probably wouldn't guess. But also you probably had to bring more pressure to do it. So sacks don't necessarily tell the entire story there. So I think there are plenty of options of guys that could break out. I just want to see who those guys are going to be. We're 47 days away from starting to see that, and then we'll learn more as the season goes on. But I like what they have. I just feel like, there's not that many proven guys there, which is fine, because it takes playing time and experience to do that, and we'll get that this season. But it's still something I'm going to be watching pretty darn closely, throughout the entire year. And even when you get to those last games, it's got to be there, because that's one of the things that I think, was their downfall in that second half against TCU.
I think that's fair.
I agree with all that. Well, let's switch gears here to basketball really quick, which is, I know for a lot of people, is where the television set gets turned to a new channel. Television set. We're streaming this on YouTube. I'm an old soul, right, Chris?
Exactly. Get the rabbit ears. Yeah.
What's a television set?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get up there on the roof and.
Yeah.
Clayton's never seen a universal remote before.
Exactly.
I have cable too. I'm one of the rare out there.
Wow.
Yeah, I cut the cord and went back. It's still, got to have live sports, as it happens. So,
well, when I was at Michigan,
anyways.
wait real quick. When I was at Michigan, we ran an antenna from the 4th floor at Bursley Hall up to the roof to get Hockey Night in Canada, and put the tinfoil on the ends of it so that we'd get a better signal on the rabbit ears. So I'm dating myself. So you kids don't know how good you got it. I get off my lawn. So
that's fair. That's awesome.
How was the reception? I got to know.
Fantastic. Yeah, it was great. We got these channels out of Montreal too. That the censorship in Canada isn't really what it was in the U.S. So back then in the day, it's like, ooh, wow, this is great. So you'd watch Don Cherry on Hockey Night in Canada, and then at midnight you'd turn to channel 54 there in Montreal, and fantastic. Okay. There you have it. So.
Things are a little more lax up there,
just a little,
including their firefighting.
Absolutely. Come on, guys. Having a hard time breathing down here.
Let's switch gears to basketball real quick. Over the weekend, we heard from Olivier Nkamhoua for the first time as a Michigan Wolverine. He spoke to the media in the evening, and a lot to take away from that. Just getting to know a guy, but something that sort of stuck out to me was, there's been this talk this offseason about obviously needing to come out and add, you need to just add the most talented basketball players you can, figure it out, build a roster that can compete in the Big Ten. But more importantly than that, maybe just reestablishing a culture. That was something that Will Shetter had said, the day after Hunter Dickinson transferred, when I believe Clayton talked to him at that pep rally. Culture is something that I think it's a little bit overused, but I think in this particular case, Michigan really does just need that hard reset over what has been, at least last year, just maybe the most frustrating season in Michigan basketball history, just because of the potential of what it could have been. Then you send 2 first-round picks to the NBA draft. Your All-American center, formerly an All-American center, I should say, transfers somewhere else, and it's kind of you're kind of starting not quite from ground zero, because there are guys that have been here, but you do kind of need guys to come in that have seen a lot of college basketball and that have been on winning teams. And Nkamhoua, I'm just going to go through here and read his quote from the story that Clayton put out. He says, "I could definitely respect them saying that the culture needs to be reestablished. A lot of those guys are young. Last year was their first year here, and that's all they know. But at the same time, Michigan does have great culture, and culture doesn't just go away because of a bad year. Culture is something you build through time, and then it's about how you bounce back. It's about how you continue to keep doing things consistently every year, every month, every week. It's not something that can be built in a day, and it's not something that's just going to go away in a day or a year. One bad year doesn't define a team and their culture. I feel like we have the chance to bring it back to what it's known for and understand that everybody has bad years." So in starting with that statement, first and foremost, I guess, your guys' thoughts on Nkamhoua's session as a whole, and his thought on where things are at right now with this culture.
Clay, go for it. You're the one that was writing the stories.
Yeah, so I thought that was a great answer, and it's actually a pretty good point. It's like cultures great when you're winning, right? But what is your culture when you have to bounce back when you face some adversity? So obviously they have to reestablish that. If they get back to the cultures they've had or the culture they had early on in the Juwan Howard, his tenure, then I think that can be fine. But they need to reestablish that, probably as Will Cheddar said. But I liked Olivier Nkamhoua's answer on that. And my first takeaway from listening to him talk and being able to ask him a few questions is just he's just an impressive dude. I mean, that dude is really mature. He was just fun to talk to, interesting. And I think that's going to be big, and that's going to be a theme with this Michigan team this year is they're more of a veteran squad. They got some guys that really have a lot to prove. And CB, you wrote this story, but Trey Jackson, who was talking to Brian Bush on the Defend the Block podcast, I love his quote that Juwan Howard told him when he was recruiting him, hey, I got a lot to prove too. Let's do this together. And it feels like that's kind of the culture, to use that word, that they're building for this season. A lot of these guys are going to be one and done at Michigan, where they come in for a year. They're going to be gone next season based on their eligibility. But I think if they can reestablish that this year, this could be a team that really helps save, this Juwan Howard era at Michigan and kind of go into that second several years here after what he did with some of John Beeline's guys, some of his early recruits. So I just really like that. I like his mental makeup. And then he's going over to Finland to go practice with the Finnish national team. Then he's headed over to Japan for the FIBA World Cup. So he'll be gone all the way until September 10th. And I think that's going to be a good experience for him. He said he's very adaptable. So he played with Tennessee a few months ago. He played with, he's going to be playing, or he's been practicing with Michigan. He's going to play with the Finnish team, and then he'll be obviously suiting up as a Michigan Wolverine this winter. So, that'll be a good experience for him. And it'll be interesting to see what he takes from that, how he does against some NBA type of talent. But I think that was a huge pickup still, and even more impressed with him each and every time you hear him talk.
I agree. And here's the thing, everybody talks about, well, these guys are only going to be there for a year. Would you rather have the one and done who has played a lot of basketball and proven it at this level at 11 points a game, compared to a guy like, with all due respect, Jet Howard, even, I hate to say it, the 1 year that they got from him, really the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. And I don't mean to be mean about it, but you got guys that know defenses and have played years of college basketball. If they get Jose Perez from West Virginia, and it's looking very well like they might, then you've got another guy. Namari Burnett is a kid who is played a ton of basketball, and he hasn't scored a lot, but I think he's capable of it. He's scoring more. Trey Jackson's played a lot of basketball and played against top-notch competition. So if I go back to Caleb Houston and, what he gave, and Moussa Diabate and Jet Howard compared to these guys, if you asked me today, would you rather have 1 year of that or 1 year of this? I'm taking this at this point because I've seen enough of the other to know that, hey, there's something to be said for experience. Now, these guys still have to gel, and they've never played together, but again, neither did the freshmen at Michigan when they were there. So I like the attitude. I like the fact that you've got a lot of veterans. It kind of reminds me of what Kansas State did last year when they brought in a bunch of guys and got them to gel, right? And they made a nice run in the tournament. I'm not saying these guys are going to do that, but in addition to guys like Doug McDaniel coming back, to me, I think Terrence Williams is going to have a better year. I really do. There's some veteran leadership here. I'm excited, at least now that they've got some pieces, and credit to them for going out and getting some of these guys. I'm excited to see what they do, much more so than I would have been even if they had added a guy like Caleb Love, who I think would have been absolutely terrible for team chemistry.
Yeah, with the topic of the show being things that we've gained clarity on, I think in the last couple of weeks, maybe the last few months at least, it's become apparent to me that this offseason is a much needed detox for this basketball program. I think that there was just, there was venom in the fan base about, the Jet Howard stuff. And, there's the constant, drudging up of just the constant buffoonery. I can't think of another word from Hunter Dickinson, just in terms of that being a distraction. And that's not to say like they're not going to miss those guys from a talent perspective, but I just feel like the hard reset is going to be better for everyone. I think, there's a chance this team isn't any better record-wise than last year's team was, but I think they'll be less frustrating. I think they'll probably be a little more watchable. And that's not exactly a ringing endorsement, but, I just kind of like that there's, we talk about developing identities, and the one that, with the pieces they currently have, and they could still add a piece in, in a Jose Perez. I like that the early bones of this team that we could see next year, that there is kind of a chip on their shoulder and a little bit of a, hey, why are we being overlooked? I thought if, any of that stuff that was going on any talk of that last offseason to me almost kind of felt like false bravado, and throughout the season felt like false bravado, especially, the comments like, oh, well, we were right in there with games, in games with Virginia and Kentucky and all that type of stuff. And, I just feel like, at least from a starting point, this program is in a much better spot than it was a couple months ago. Now, again, you got to get back on the floor and play some games and win some basketball games and build a resume worthy of getting into the NCAA tournament. But I don't know. Right now, I mean, it's into the unknown, but there's a lot more at ease about it. But maybe also some of that ease is the fact that the expectations are going to be much lower.
And I'm just happy that I don't think we're going to see a guy on this team standing there not giving a crap if he's not playing defense and not rebounding and not boxing out at a big moment in the game, stuff like that. That is crap that I cannot tolerate. I can't even imagine what a coaching staff is thinking when they're sitting there and watching that, and teammates. And we saw it in that Rutgers game, fellas. That was the beginning of the end of the season for all intents and purposes. That one play, a failure to box out on a free throw, and the air came out of the balloon, and you could tell that guys were fed up and it was over. So I don't think you're going to see that this year. I think you're going to see a lot of veteran guys that bring it every night, and to me, that'll be fantastic.
And if Doug McDaniel can be Marquise Noel, then maybe they do make a run like Kansas State.
You know what? He's going to get better. He's going to be better. Yeah, I'll say this.
Yeah.
Doug has to be a better practice player from what we've heard. You know what? So hopefully he takes it upon himself. He's not going to be playing as many minutes, and maybe that factored into it, right? Maybe it's because he was logging so many minutes that he wasn't a great practice player. But Hunter Dickinson wasn't a great practice player. There were 2 or 3 guys. That cannot happen. You have got to have great practice players. Those are the guys that set the tempo for your team and set the expectations. So I think this will be a better practice team as well. I think I don't know what they're going to do. I'm anxious to see them in action, though. At least there's some excitement there because there is some talent on this roster to see what they can do.
On that topic, too, one of the things I thought was most interesting, I asked Olivier Nkamhoua about Doug McDaniel, Terrace Reed, what he's kind of seen from those 2 guys. And he said the thing that has impressed him the most about Doug is his maturity, how hard he's working. So maybe, he's taking a step there. I mean, you're a freshman point guard that was going to play 8-9 minutes a game. Then you're thrust into a role, which I'm sure he welcomed, other than feeling bad for Jalen Llewellyn. But I thought he handled that pretty well. If he can take a big leap this season, I saw a quote from, I think, Phil Martelli on M Live, where it was like, if Howard Isley's going to have anything to say about it, Doug McDaniel is going to be a completely different player this season, and he's been working with him. So if he can take that leap, plus you add these guys around them like we've talked about, then this could be a competitive team. But still a lot of question marks there, still a lot to be seen. But, I mean, I feel a little bit better about this team than, when you listen to some of these guys talk, than maybe I did before. And they're not done, as you guys both mentioned. Jose Perez, they're on Malcolm Dandridge, Memphis transfer, who could be a backup center. So they could fill those scholarships and be rolling with 5 transfers, which is crazy to think about, coming into next season.
Yeah, and ultimately, like we're gonna know, I think, pretty early on, like if it's all about to quote Chris, like what their give a crap level is, and if it's not high and the effort isn't great, I think that's going to be pretty damning for the guy at the top of the program. So I like the message of, hey, I have something to prove too. I think that's I don't know what kind of results it'll all yield, but yeah,
right.
We'll see what happens.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, we will move into questions here. Have some from the message board, also from our wonderful YouTube fans. If you'd like to move yourself to the front of the line, be sure to use that donate button below. But before we get into questions, I want to take a break real quick to talk about our friends over at Rogue Shop. Go check out rogueshop.com if you have issues sleeping, chronic pain, and or anxiety or stress. Use promo code The Wolverine to get 10% off of your order. Listen, I mean, this we've had some time to relax in the last few weeks. But there have been times putting together a football preview, which is out now. Here's an ad read inside of an ad read, the WolverineOnDemand.com, if you've not gotten your copy of that yet. Or sometimes you just need to pull things back and slow down. And for someone like me, sometimes that's hard to do because my brain moves 100 miles an hour, and sometimes you just need to take that step back. So being able to work with Rogue Shop with some of the CBD, the THC, the edibles, their wide menu of products, the tinctures, smokables, bath salts, pain creams, topicals, vapes, candles, soaps, more. It's been very helpful. And I know people that have worked with Rogue Shop through our site have shared a lot of the same feedback. So they handcraft all of their own stuff. They grow their own cannabis in their own facility. All of their products are made with their own stuff. It's straight from the source here. The website has a 24/7 chat function where customers can ask them anything. All of their edibles are custom formulated with cannabis, vitamins, and plant materials. Rogue Shop is America's #1 online dispensary and health and wellness shop. They are a true small business that is disabled, veteran-owned. So, I leave the spot open for you guys to share your experiences as well.
Yeah, the edibles, man. I've been sleeping great, and thanks to these guys. It doesn't take much, fellas. That's the thing. It doesn't take much. Great product and good people. Always happy to support them.
Yeah, the feedback's been great on our message board too, with people trying it for the first time. Some people used other stuff, switched over to Rogue Shop. Haven't heard a bad word about them, and actually have gotten some private messages that we're all included on from some of our fans as well that have thanked us for pushing the message here. So definitely go check them out.
All right. Head on over to rogueshop.com. That's ROGUE shop.com. Use promo code The Wolverine to get 10% off your order today. All right. It's that time of week again. Our last segment of the show every Monday night here on the Wolverines live program is program. There's the old soul in me again. Is
program.
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 Our friend JD Piquel over here. But let's get into questions. A lot to get to this week. I want to start from some of the YouTube ones first because they're a little more things go in all directions on the fort. If you're a member over there, you know that. So we will get to some of those, but I want to start with this one from Rylant31 here on our YouTube channel, who asks, where is it? There it is. Ballas, are you picking Michigan to go 11-1 because it's hard to go 12-0? If you had to pick game by game, would you have them 12-0 on paper?
Fair question. You know what? I picked 11-1 with a loss at Penn State. I think, come game time, I might change my mind and say, hey, Michigan's playing great. They match up extremely well against Penn State. But, yeah, that is part of it. And, to go back-to-back undefeated seasons is extremely, extremely hard. And we saw last year, could have easily lost to Illinois. Yeah, they had some injuries. So did Illinois. The year before that, had to pull out a couple games. It was Nebraska on the road. Remember that? It was crazy. Penn State, they had to kind of pull a rabbit out of their hat there late, even though they played better for the majority of that game, I thought, or at least in big spurts. So I go back to 2015, the game Halloween night against Minnesota. You know what? There are always going to be those tough ones. And so, but yes, I would say that's probably accurate. And if I had to pick game by game, probably. I don't know. I would say I will say, though, that Penn State game is the one that concerns me. I think they're going to have a great defense. I think they're going to be jacked up to play that game, and they generally play a very good game at Penn State against Michigan. I can't remember the last time they blew them out there. It's a while ago. Even that 28-16 win, they had to score late, and I think it was set up by the late touchdown was set up by a fumble, if I'm not mistaken. So, or an interception. So that's the one I'm pointing to. But you can still lose that game and win the Big Ten if you beat Ohio State and win the tiebreaker, which is going to be a goofy one. Somebody on our message board posted that it'd go down to like the number 5 tiebreaker, which is the record of the West teams that you played. So it'll be fascinating, but great question, Ryan.
And with that tiebreaker, Michigan avoids playing Iowa and Wisconsin, the 2 top contenders in the West. So you don't know how that's going to play out. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Clayton, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we both had 12-0 in the football preview. So let me kind of flip the question on us here is why did you pick 12-0? What was it about the prediction that made you put it in print. Now, obviously, it was as of June 16th or whenever we submitted our final copy for that. But what was your rationale for that?
I'd pick him to go 12-0 every year. So I'm just kidding.
And Matt Harbaugh, ladies and gentlemen.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just think that, one, I like how the schedule sets up. I think that's pretty obvious. And, I agree. It's going to be a really tough game on the road at Penn State. I'd still give Michigan an edge in that game. I could see it coming down right to the wire. I think the Ohio State game will probably come down to the wire. But those are the two that really worry me. And I just think that this Michigan team is going to get it done in those two games. I mean, the fact that you get Ohio State at home, you're returning your quarterback. They're not. I mean, I know he'll have experience by the time you get to that game, but I like that. And I just feel like that atmosphere, Michigan's going to pull off 3 in a row. But, yeah, I mean, we're looking at what, percentage chances, 52% maybe. I mean, I'm not overly confident that they're going to win every single game, but, I think they're going to win each and every one of those regular season games. So that's why I'm at 12-0. I guess that's a pretty obvious statement, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tailor it even more. I picked them to go 12-0 because I think they're just better than every team on their schedule. And it's not like, and again, you could have a loss that it's super hard to go undefeated. You could have a loss that comes out of nowhere, but it's not like the NFL where on any given week, anyone can knock you off. I think there are really only maybe 2 or 3 chances for someone to get Michigan on an off day or just outplay them this year. So for me, that's the rationale there. I like the way they carry their business, and I think they're the most they're probably the deepest team. Maybe not the most talented, but they are the deepest team in the Big Ten. And heck, they probably still are the most talented. But given Ohio State, they always have the stars, so to speak. But I think they're a little more top heavy. So that would be my rationale for that. We'll move on to this one from Jeremy Clore, who says, should they pass more even when they don't, quote unquote, need to? More game reps passing so they're better prepared when they do not need to pass down the stretch.
I thought they tried that at times last year, to be honest with you, and it didn't go so well. I can remember a few games where I'm like, okay, they're going to go pass. They went 3 and out, in the passing game, and they're like, all right, a couple times. And it's like, let's get back to it. But I think so definitely especially in the non-conference. I don't really give a damn whose feelings you're hurting. As Bobby Bowden used to say, the former Florida State coach, he said, it's not our job to stop us. It's their job to stop us. So if you're up 42-0 at halftime, come out in the second half and start slinging it and working on things that you need to work on, right? So that's what these non-conference games are supposed to be, especially these patsies. You're going to get the win. So you know what? Go out there and do some things that you need to improve upon. So I think so, Jeremy. I think it's another great question. It's what makes this program, the best program on the YouTube.
I agree, but also, I mean, coming out and slinging it up 14-0 third quarter, it's 2023. I think they call that bullying.
Yeah. Not even touching it.
But I agree with this. I agree with UCB. I agree with Jeremy. I assume he that's why he asked this is because he's kind of along with this premise. It's kind of like, remember the Lincoln Riley teams at Oklahoma, the really good ones where it's like you're passing a ton. You probably don't need to. You're blowing out a lot of teams. You're putting up a ton of points against really weak defenses in the Big 12. But then once they got to the playoff, they were still – I mean, they didn't lose those games necessarily because they couldn't score enough. It was their defense. But they were still putting up points against some really good offenses because they had great talent, great quarterback play. Obviously, we know he produces fantastic quarterbacks. But they were also just in such a great rhythm by the end of the year with some of that stuff. And I thought Michigan wasn't quite there. I know they had the injuries against Illinois, but when you really needed it, they made a couple plays. But it was such a struggle in that game to limp through it without your running backs, your top 2 running backs. So if Michigan can be, and I think they will, I think they'll do that. And I think that they'll do that because it'll work more. As you said, Chris, I agree. I mean, they tried to do that here and there, and it wasn't quite there. So if you're improved at it, as I expect them to be, you're going to be able to practice that more, stay on the field in some of those drives. And then by the end of the year, things will be clicking a little bit more.
Clayton, I think you nailed it with the rhythm. That's the key word, rhythm and repetition. I think that, obviously they can flip the switch on calling plays whenever they want on a football Saturday, but to me, that's where this fall camp is. If you're going to be about it, if you're going to be about being more balanced offensively, we know that you're probably going to be able to control the line of scrimmage. We know that you have two of the best backs in college football. You got to rep this throughout camp, and you have to rep it, Monday through Thursday when they're on the practice field. And they're going to be probably going to be non-conference games. There might even be games early in conference play where they probably are going to throw a little more, and then the discussion on the fort and the game thread or on social media is going to be that they need to get back to running the ball more because Michigan fans just thrive on the opposite take or the what's behind door number 2. So for me, it's not so much about pass to run in play, in games and play calling situations. It's what are they really going to focus on in this fall camp? And I think it's something where you're not abandoning the run. I think ideally 50-50 is probably where you want to be with this group. But if you're going to grind your opponent into dust anyways, sling it around. And slinging it doesn't mean just chucking the ball 40 yards down the field. Love to see some more slant routes in this offense. Would love to see more of the play action stuff that, JJ was really good at when they called it, at least, when you look at the PFF numbers and things like that. So, yeah, I think that they do need to rep it a little bit more. I don't know that you just rep it in non-conference games. It has to be repped, in camps and in practices. So.
And let's be clear, you know what? When they needed to against Ohio State, they did, right? So there's something to be said for saving some of the playbook and some of your plays for those games as well. And we saw that with the great route there, the goofy route, but the great route, it worked out great to Colston Loveland on the 45-yard touchdown. Cornelius Johnson, you know what? I thought Ohio State got too aggressive defensively. Michigan took advantage of it. So I'm excited. Hey, there's Captain Riker. There's Ryan Day. So advertising is just for men, look.
Yeah, no, I just had to hone in on that for a second. Just those rosy cheeks always just throw me. They're distracting, really. I don't even know where I was going with that. Let's go to one from the board. This from section 12 on the fort, talking about Empower moving over to the NIL space. He says, can Empower become the equalizer for Michigan football in the new college football world? And if so, could we be the new Alabama that's in the playoff year in and year out with the network and connections that Michigan has?
You would think so, but they have not gotten the traction that they thought they would on the trail. Unfortunately, that when they went, Jim Harbaugh went city to city. They were hoping to pick up a few more big donors. Didn't exactly happen. So they've got some bills to pay, fellas, and some of these donors had better step up. Otherwise, your Michigan team isn't going to be able to hang. And it's disappointing, frankly. So these guys, they see right now that, recruiting's going well, and, why should we have to contribute to that, and aren't getting really a ton from the athletic department saying this is what we need to do. And I'll give you an example. There's a coach that came from another program that said, if I was at where I was before and we needed $10 million, the AD would pick up the phone and we'd have our $10 million immediately. And I don't think Michigan's prepared to do that. I think that they are still trying to figure some things out, and that's disappointing to me. So they still need to get everybody on the same page. It's, but I give credit. I also want to give credit to the collectives, especially Valiant and Champion Circle, for what they are trying to accomplish. But you can't rely on one or two guys to foot the bill here. You've got to get more people on board.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to organize a group of donors that weren't organized before. If you look across the South and, places like Tennessee, for example, they were already aligned. They were already organized. They were already doing things that they probably weren't supposed to. Now they still are. The thing with Empower, Michigan has a great reach. They have a great, tons of donors and, one of the largest living alumni bases in the entire country. But, I still think Michigan's going to play by the rules, to a certain extent. So I don't think it's going to be a great equalizer. Now, if you raise, double what Alabama is and you're doing it legally in terms of how you're distributing the money, then maybe. But I think that's going to be really tough to do. Go look up the Red Elephant Club of Tuscaloosa, group of donors that supports Alabama, and read their mission statement. It is to I don't have it pulled up, but something along the lines of supporting Alabama football in any way possible, not any way within the rules, not any any way possible so that they can win championships. So it's tough to compete with that. It's hard to beat the cheaters, as Jim Harbaugh said in the past. But I think Michigan closing the gap and getting as close as they possibly can to that has got to be the goal. And maybe it's just going to take some more time.
Yeah, it's, from the start, I feel like we're a broken record here, but they just got to get organized. And I feel like simply just being organized, I think, can solve a lot of their issues, because there is that disconnect right now. So we'll see what happens there. I think when you start throwing around, the term, could you be the new Alabama or could you be Georgia? Well, let's make one thing clear. Those two programs are where they are because they do operate differently than everyone else. Both legally and probably illegally. And we know that that's not going to be, in terms of things that are outside of the rules or something that, if discovered, could tarnish the university's reputation. We know damn well Michigan's not going to do anything that could compromise its reputation or how it's seen. But there are still plenty of things you can do within the rules, I think, to, it's not illegal. It's not an NCAA violation to be organized. So get organized and figure it out. Because I feel like we're 2 years into doing live shows like this, and it feels like every time we talk NIL, it's gotta get it together. Gotta get it together. And there's incremental process or progress, but it's just not moving as quickly as it should. With the connections, with the networking, all those things. So that's my spiel on it, so to speak.
Very good.
Let's go to
last one. Sorry. I got a quiche in the oven here.
Last one. Okay, too, well, I'll ask my question then. I was going to save one for me. It's actually a two-parter. This is from me to you guys. What constitutes a Midwest town, and is the town that you're from fit that criteria?
Okay, Hunter. Yeah, Midwest, Upper Midwest. Yeah, we live in the Upper Midwest, right? I think that's what it's classified and or categorized. And Grand Rapids was a nice Midwest town. It really depends on what side of the state you're on too. It's kind of crazy. Ann Arbor's so much different than Grand Rapids. So, everybody talks about the hospitality and everything. And I've been to some towns like Lincoln, Nebraska, that I thought was a great Midwest town, even though that's really more of like a plains state, right? I mean, is that what is it? What is that classified as? Is that Midwest? Megan will tell us. But to me, it was Midwest, and it felt Midwest, and it felt like those people were welcoming. They were great people. Do I feel that way about Ann Arbor? Not necessarily. So do I really give a damn what Hunter Dickinson thinks about it, who's nicer, Kansas people or Ann Arbor people? Not in the least. So I wish he would just shut up and dribble. I
don't even know what you're talking about. It was a totally random, unprompted question that I had.
So anyway, that's my story.
Yeah, I'm also from Grand Rapids. I would categorize it as a Midwest town, I guess, or city. I understand what he was saying, though. I said that on the message. I mean, Ann Arbor is definitely different than Lawrence, Kansas. Ann Arbor is different than a lot of towns in Michigan, but I think we all want to be mad at Hunter and all that, but it is what it is.
I don't want to be. He just keeps giving me reason to be. So it's just like, just go, you know what? Just go do your thing, man. You did what was best for you. We don't need the comparisons. You know what? It's just like, I'm not rooting for Kansas to win anyway because of the way they operate. It'd be like rooting for Alabama or Georgia or the Taliban or something like that. But B, when he gets over there and starts shooting off his mouth again, it's fine, right? It's like Bill Laimbeer, everybody like back in the day before your time. It's one thing when he's doing it for your team and you love him, but when he's doing it, for somebody else, then you hate him. So let's not get there and let's not tarnish your legacy anymore. That's just my opinion.
Well, I'd argue legacy was tarnished by losing all those games that they were just so close in.
Yeah,
I'll go quick on this one. To me, I think the criteria, just as a talking point, I think Midwest town is filled with blue collar, salt of the earth people. I'm from Taylor. I'm from the Downriver area, which was basically built by or fueled by the auto industry. Lots of people that worked for Ford Motor Company, people that still work very hard in the auto industry. So yes, I would consider my town a Midwest town. But all right, that's going to do it for us. Chris has a quiche in the oven, as does Clayton. Thanks to everyone for the great questions, for all the feedback throughout the show. Be sure to like and subscribe, or like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. A lot of great stuff coming in the pipeline. Like we said, live shows are firing on all cylinders again. We'll be at Big Ten Media Days next week. We have fall camp coverage coming up. So this is going to be your hub to see a lot of that stuff show up on video. Order the football preview, the WolverineOnDemand.com. Shout out to our sponsors again tonight, Bird Dogs, and also our friends over at Rogue Shop. For Clayton Safey and Chris Ballas, I'm Anthony Broom. Thank you so much for all the great questions and for watching tonight. We will talk to you again soon.